Hey, what's up? This is Josey Scott, the outlaw, OG, original lead singer of the band Saliva, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Ladies and gentlemen, please would you bring your attention to this podcast, episode 363. As always, I'm Trent, your host of Thunder Underground, and you will not hear any crying ass bitching from me about this week's guest. It's Josey Scott, the original vocalist of the rock band Saliva. You like that? I only fit in 3 puns there in that opening statement, but I know for some people 1 pun is more than enough, so I'll leave it at that. I'm going to hear in just a bit, I'm going to talk to Josey Scott about everything he's got going on now. Of course, his time in Saliva and some other great stuff. Talk about some wrestling, talk about some music, as we do here on this podcast. So thank you for joining us here on episode 363. Before we jump into all that, I need to let you know who the sponsors are. MedFarm is a dispensary located in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 24683 East Highway 51, right off the highway. Can't miss them. One of the great things about MedFarm is they have a drive-thru, and many dispensaries do not have that option. If you call, you can even text, message, whatever you need to do to place your order. You can just zip right through and go through that drive-thru and be on your way. Of course, you can go through the drive-thru even if you haven't placed your order ahead, or you can even go inside to see their giant selection. If you want to check it out ahead of time, hit up leafly.com. Their website is medfarmok.com. Their socials on Facebook is MedFarm, that's PHARM. Instagram is MedFarmOK. They're always running specials on there. Another special that they are always running is if you mention Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order, which is very cool. But on top of all that, the reason you need to hit up MedFarm is that they are cannabis with a cause. 30% of their profits at all times, this isn't a promotion, this is 100% of the time, they give nearly a third of their profits to build no-kill animal shelters. This is a huge thing that, is needed way more in this world. So, hit up MedFarm. If you're in the Tulsa area, you could be there within 20 minutes of anywhere you're at for the most part. So hit up MedFarm and be sure to mention Thunder Underground. Sunset Tattoo is a tattoo shop located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed. And most importantly, they are mother approved. If you call, text, email ahead, set up an appointment with Jake ahead of time, you can go in there, talk about what work you want to have done. He also accepts walk-ins. Check out all his photos of all his work. Instagram and Facebook are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. I've personally had work done by him. I'm going to have more here in the future. I'm very happy with it. I know several other people around here that have as well. He's also tattooed a lot of touring musicians. He's been doing this, like I said, for 25 plus years. So hit up Jake. Tell him you heard about him on Thunder Underground. We've also got DEB Concerts, our longest running sponsor, who is continuously bringing great music to the Tulsa area for the last several years. Bringing bands to downtown Tulsa in the past like Saxon and Last in Line and Junkyard, bands that I wouldn't think I would have seen in downtown Tulsa, so I'm very happy with what DEB Concerts has done throughout the years. They stepped into the arena game in this past couple years. They brought acts like Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, and Nelly. A couple sold-out shows earlier this year from Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube. They've also brought in the Metal Tour of the Year, Megadeth, Lamb of God. Earlier this summer, they brought in Poison with Tom Kiefer of Cinderella and LA Guns. And they're continuously, like I said, bringing great acts to this area. If you follow them on the socials, they're on all of them, DEB Concerts. The website is debconcerts.com to stay up to date. And of course, we keep you up to date here as well. They also book the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year and bring tons of great acts there as well. Doug Burgess, who runs DEB Concerts, has been on this podcast several times. Great dude that's doing great things for this area. So huge thank you to DEB Concerts. All right, so it's been, I guess I should have looked at a calendar. I know it's been 3 weeks since I've been home because I just got home a day and a half ago after being in Florida for 3 weeks. I did put out an episode here while I was gone. The Simon Daniels, the vocalist for Autograph episode, came out the week before last. That was a fun one, so check that one out if you get a chance, if you have not yet. I mention that because, normally every time I do an episode, I, spend a little bit of time before the interview talking about something that's going on in the rock world, or talking about a new album or a concert I saw, whatever. While I was gone, I was working a festival in Florida called Halloween. It doesn't really fit into the genre of this podcast, but one of the acts on the bill was Portugal the Man. If you're not familiar with them, sure, they're not hard rock or metal, but they put on a stellar live show, and they're always throwing in covers, which every time I've happened to see them, one of the bands they tend to cover a lot is Metallica, and they did the same at Halloween. I know they covered For Whom the Bell Tolls. They did like a medley of songs after that. They covered Nirvana and Weezer, and then they even covered Rain and Blood by Slayer. And it sounds great. When you think of a non-metal band covering Slayer, how good is that really going to sound? But it came off great. So there's some random info for you. The rest of the time I was gone, I did not see any music to report upon, but I did listen to a ton of music on my drives. And I believe in the last episode I talked about that new Alter Bridge album, but that album is a contender for, one of the top 3 or 4 albums of the year. So check out the new Alter Bridge album if you have not. So much great music has come out this year. I can't even think of what's come out the last 3 weeks. I know that that's a horrible thing to say. I'm supposed to prepare better for this, but it's just time to get on an episode. So one major news story that came out while I was gone, of course, was the Motley Crue thing. And I almost just thought I'm not going to talk about this because I've spent too much time over the past 7.5 years talking about Motley Crue. And I don't like doing it as much because it always turns negative when it's coming from me. When Jason was here, he always kind of brought it back a little bit for me because my negativity always relied around Vince Neil's live performance. And that's kind of what the news was, of course, that Mick Mars has now stepped away officially, and John 5 is now the new, I guess they said touring guitarist. I don't know if they're ever going to record music or not, if that will include Mick or John 5. Kind of irrelevant because I think the last studio album, I don't think supposedly Mick didn't play a lot on. I think DJ Ashba did, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But the point of all this is another news story just came out a couple days ago that quoted a quote industry insider. That could mean someone legitimate, or it could mean Joe Bob from fucking Des Moines, Iowa. Who knows? But someone said that the headline was Nikki Sixx made Mick Mars cry before he quit the band, making it sound like, he was a dick to him and that's why he quit. But then you read the story and it really had nothing to do with that. And it had more to do with the fact that supposedly, leading up to their stadium tour that's going to happen in Europe next year with Def Leppard, Nikki and Tommy were really pushing to replace Vince Neil, and Mick Mars wanted nothing to do with that. So, for me, as the proponent, the massive fan of John Corabi that I am, and the very anti-Vince Neil live fan that I am, as I've said repeatedly, I'm a huge fan of Motley Crue and everything Vince Neil has ever recorded. I just don't want to see it live. So put that aside. Whenever I hear that, I think, well, this is kind of a double-edged sword. Mick Mars, to me, has always kind of been the sanity of Motley Crue. And Mick Mars would make a very valid point whenever you say that the majority of people going to a Motley Crue show obviously want to see Vince Neil. The majority of people want to see the 4 original members. And going way back, wasn't it Nikki Sixx or Tommy Lee or all of them, who knows, way back when said that there will never be a time when there wasn't all 4, and of course that changed when Corabi came, and then of course that changed whenever Tommy Lee left for a bit. And now here we are without Mick Mars. So now we stand here in 2022 as Nikki Sixx being the only continuous member of Motley Crue throughout the years, but they've never had less than 3 original members at any point in time. So if something like this actually happened, and that's why Mick Mars didn't want to be a part of this, then next year, if they actually did replace Vince Neil, it would only be 2 of them. And again, I know how sticky these situations are. I'm a hypocrite when it comes to this because sometimes I back bands that don't have members that other people don't. Hence the Pantera reunion that is going on now. I'm all for it. I know that others aren't. That's fine. I've supported, look at Megadeth, or there's a few other bands like that where it's just one member where it's rotating around with different people throughout the years. Or you've got a band like Quiet Riot where there's literally no one left. You've at least got a classic member in Rudy Sarzo. Or you got a band like Foreigner where at times there's no one in the live show that's an original member. Autograph is now that way. I just interviewed Simon Daniels. There's no original members left in this band. But I know that Motley Crue is a step above a band like Autograph or Quiet Riot when it comes to the amount of people that are going to show up and the amount of people that are paying attention. So I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm just saying that it's a kind of a double-edged thing because, as someone that has stopped going to see Motley Crue live, I've seen Motley Crue and Vince Neil live many, many times throughout the years. I've probably seen Vince Neil live between solo and Motley Crue 15, 20 times in my life. And I can't remember a single one of them that I would say was even halfway decent. And I know that there's many people that would disagree with that, and that's fine. That's your opinion. That's great. Just like this is my opinion. But I think if they did replace Vince Neil, it wouldn't be a smart decision for the grand scheme of things. The only way it would work is if it was someone that was current or someone that was massive in the same sense of how they replaced Mick with John 5. It's someone that is, when I say current, I mean not from the heyday of this stuff. John 5's been, recording, playing live for 25 plus years, going back to the 90s. But he's an artist that a huge fan of current hard rock and metal, that a huge amount of those fans are big fans of this guy. So that kind of brings more exposure that you might have someone that doesn't really listen to Motley Crue, but they're a Rob Zombie fan or, a more modern fan of bands like Slipknot or Disturbed. All of a sudden will be like, well, I want to check out Motley Crue because John 5's in the band now. So they could pull that off if they got someone. I can't even think of someone that would work, but that you throw in there. Because if you just get a random dude that is from a Motley Crue tribute band or someone that would sound great and do it well, that's not going to appease anyone. Except me, I guess. And if you got John Crabbe, of course, I would fucking buy a ticket and fly to Europe, personally. But the majority of people obviously aren't going to care. So I guess kudos for Mick for standing his ground, because we all know that Mick Mars is a friend of John Crabbe, and they're still in touch. And even a few years ago, John Crabbe recorded 2 or 3 songs with Mick Mars from Mick's solo work that still has never seen the light of day for some reason. Hopefully now, maybe that will, now that he's stepped away from Crue. I don't know. It's random info. I'm sure that there's many people that disagree with what I just said, but like I said, it's all here or there. It's a monthly thing that I'm on here bitching about Motley Crue, I guess. But let's talk about something more positive, and that would be Josey Scott. Josey Scott, the original singer of Saliva. So a little quick timeline on this. I think it was, I didn't even look it up. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago now when I had found out that Josey Scott was living in the same area as me. He lives in a town that's probably about 20 to 30 minutes from the town I'm in. Both of us are right outside of Tulsa. I reached out to him on just sent him a direct message on Twitter and said, hey, would you like to be on this podcast that me and Jason have going on? He said, yeah, that would sound great. Let's work it out. And then, of course, as things go, we didn't ever work it out. Time went on. Now, I'd thought about it throughout the years, but then just never made it happen. And then flash forward to September of 2022, Blue Ridge Rock Fest. I worked the festival. And that's something I talked about briefly, I don't know, a few episodes ago. I worked artist relations for one of the 2 main stages. And I had I think it was about 8 bands a day over the 4 days, so 30 plus bands. And one of the artists that, as an artist relations stage liaison, I was responsible for was Josey Scott. So I got the chance, to meet him and help him get places he needed to be and get things done. And he showed up. He was there with his wife, Kendra, who was great. His son was there. His manager, PA, a few other people, everybody part of his party was excellent people. And it's always I haven't dealt with many that weren't good people. Of course, you always have a tour manager here or there that's upset about something, but that doesn't mean that they're not a good person. But it's always refreshing whenever you see a full group, a full party of people come in and everybody, is easy to talk to. Great people. So that was great to see. And I did mention whenever I was talking to Josey at one point that, hey, I'm from Broken Arrow right outside of Tulsa. And, we started talking about that. So one thing led to another, and I didn't bring it up then. I just waited until after the festival and then hit up his management and said, let's make this happen for the podcast. And sure enough, we did. So we recorded this, and now this has been over a month because I've been gone 3 weeks, and I did it a week or so, I think, before I left. So we're finally being able to get this thing out. Josey Scott has got new music coming. That's something we talk about. So something really to look forward to. As he states here in the interview, if you're a fan of Saliva, you're not going to be disappointed. It's not like he's turning into a pop star or a country artist. He's going to be doing exactly what you know and love from him, and he's back playing on the live scene. He recently played a show in Memphis, his hometown. I know he played in Durant, Oklahoma with Brett Scallions of Fuel recently, and they did a show up north. I think it was in Minnesota maybe. And he had some other shows scheduled here in November, but I think most of those have been postponed to early next year. But with all that being said, he's back doing this thing, back where he belongs on stage. And when he came out at Blue Ridge and performed with Saliva, they had him come out at the end of the show. It was at their performance, their current singer, Bobby, performed a majority of the set, and then Josey came out for the final 3 tracks. From a personal standpoint, being able to stand on the side of the stage and see that live was very cool. Quite an honor. The man still sounds as good as he ever has. And that's something you love to see as a rock fan, as a music fan. I can remember the first time I ever heard Saliva. I was driving. I don't remember where, but it was somewhere here in Tulsa area. And Your Disease came on the radio. And this, was at the turn of the century where, nu metal was a thing and rap metal, it kind of, was a thing, and it was kind of in the late 90s. It was kind of on the downward thing, I think, around that point. But the song started, the vocals kick in, and I'm like, okay, here's a new, quote unquote, rap rock, rap metal band. Okay. But then the chorus hits, and I'm like, oh shit, this is not your normal rap rock or rap metal band. I believe that, if I remember right, that single came out, and it was before Every 6 Seconds came out. It was on the soundtrack for, I should have looked that up. Was it Scream or Spawn? It was one of those horror movies around the time. And I actually went and bought the soundtrack just for that song. And the soundtrack was, loaded with great, hard rock and metal songs. Then the album Every 6 Seconds came out. And of course, Click, Click, Boom came out. Another massive hit. But then when you listen to the album, kind of those 2 songs were the songs that incorporated rap pretty heavily. The rest of the album lent more just to his vocals, which I thought was excellent. As a, just a fan of huge melodic vocalists, Josey Scott, I instantly became a fan of him and that band. And just everything that they put out when, during the time when Josey was in the band. I think it was 6 albums. So many great songs. My favorite Saliva song was the title track from Survival of the Sickest, which would have been, I believe, their 4th album with Josey, or I also love Holding On. Huge fan of that song. Broken Sunday. Let me think. Black Sheep. Southern Girls. I'm just trying to name some non-singles that if you're not familiar with, you need to check out. But definitely check out Holding On if you never have. That song is fucking phenomenal. All right. With all that being said, I think it's time to start talking to Josey Scott. So let's just dive into this. Here's Josey Scott, the original vocalist of Saliva.
Oh, you got a Shrine shirt on. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I love that venue, man.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it's probably my favorite venue around here besides the Canes, obviously.
I love how y'all call it the Canes.
Right. I know there's no "the" in front of it, but I've been doing that my whole life, so it's hard to stop, you know.
Yeah, it's an Oklahoma thing. Since I've become an Oklahoman, I've picked up on a lot of things that y'all say. And a lot of things you don't say. Like in Tennessee, when you run into one of your buddies, you say, "What about it?" And Oklahoma guys just look at me with this 1,000-yard stare when what I'm saying is, "What about it? What's going on?" You know, it's another way of saying, "What's up, dude?" Yeah. And they just don't get it at all. So I've tried to break myself of that Tennessee thing of saying Tennessee type greetings and stuff like that, because Oklahoma guys they don't get that.
You haven't heard that myself either.
What about
it? You've been here like quite a while now, right? Over a decade?
Yeah, I've lived here since almost a decade. I've been here. Me and Kendra got married in 2004, and I was still living in Memphis, but we dated back and forth for the longest time, and then we got married in 4, and she lived with me in Bartlett, Tennessee, outside of Memphis for a few years, and then we moved to Counce, Tennessee, down by Jackson, and then the crime just got so bad. I was like, man, we can't. And then once we had our second daughter in 2011, I was quitting the band and everything, and just planning on being a regular Joe and raising my family. And I said, we can't raise our kids in this crime, man. We got to get these babies out of this crime infested area, because I grew up around gangsters and, having to tote a gun and, being afraid to walk down the street, in some spots and stuff like that. So I told her, I said, we got to move. So when we used to come visit her mother in Claremore, or actually in Foyle, right outside of Claremore, at her little ranch, I was like, man, this is like Mayberry. Like, we got to move here.
Yeah.
So we moved. I think we moved here in 2015 or 16.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, we've been coming back and forth, to visit her family and whatnot for Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that. But once I moved here, I was like, you'll never get me out of here, man. It's perpetually 1984 here.
Yeah, that's true. Well, man, you just did these shows with Brett Scallions. I mean, that's a great double bill between the two of you. Was that an idea that one of you had, or was that presented to you guys? I'm sure you guys were friends, from past and all that. But...
Yeah, he gave me my first gold record. I mean, he was originally a Tennessee boy, too, and they blew up in the late 90s. So, we were always kind of in awe of Fuel and their success, and really super proud of him and all like that. And then we got to tour some when I was on the road with Saliva, and we played a bunch of dates on the road, and then we played 3 nights at the House of Blues on Sunset Strip, right there, across the street from this famous rock and roll hotel called the Hyatt. They call it the Riot House. I think they've closed it or torn it down since then, but it's one of those famous hotels, like Led Zeppelin rode the motorcycle down the hallway and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that happened at the Riot. But we played there that night, and he gave me my gold record that night, my first gold record. And he bought me a wall of Corona in my hotel room, a whole wall of beer.
Wow.
So we've been friends ever since then. And he's a sweetheart of a man. He's really Brett Scallions and his brother too, Greg, is a very dear friend of mine. He's the guitar tech for Filter.
Okay.
And they're both them Scallions boys are just very dear friends of mine. I just love them endlessly.
Was this the first time you had performed with him since way back then?
Yeah. Yep. It's the first time. It's the first time I've been on stage. Well,
Yeah.
I did a show here in town at Safari Joe's water park, and that was awesome show, man. And kind of got my sea legs back, and then got to go do those shows with Brett on the road. And his band is incredible too. We actually shared the bass player and guitar player, and his guitar player Jason Womack is incredible, and his bass player, I cannot remember his name, but he was an incredible musician too. But yeah, I enjoyed playing with those guys always.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Yeah.
No. So like with you're saying you shared the band with him on these shows you got coming up, like at the beginning of November with 7 Year Witch and Seven Stones. Who's like going to be in your solo band? Or have you got that set yet on your band members?
Yeah, no, I have Tasha Jones is my drummer. She's like I call her the female Tommy Lee. She's a incredible drummer from Los Angeles, and I have a bass player from Australia named Mark Dalbeth who moved to Los Angeles, and he's just incredible musician, and he's going to play bass for me. And my son is playing rhythm guitar, Dynamite Dylan, and the lead guitar, I believe I got this guy, Sam Bam Colton. He plays for Faster Pussycat, and he also plays for a band called Dorothy. That he's just a phenomenal guitar player, so I'm excited to be using him too. Maybe someday if I say my prayers, I'll have my own band.
Right. Well, I mean, you've been working on new music, right? I've read that you are working on some like reworked versions of Saliva songs, and then are you also doing new music as well? I'm assuming.
No, yeah, I'm planning on putting out a new record with brand new music on it. I got a new single that I'm working on called Evil Knievel, and I'm really excited about that. And I want to get some new music out there. Everybody's all the fans have been asking for new music, so I want to hurry up and get some new music out there. And I'm not opposed to doing some acoustic versions or some orchestrated versions of, different Saliva hits like Always and Your Disease. And there's a couple of surprises, some deep cuts that I want to pull out and maybe redo. Because a lot of those songs didn't get released as singles, and a lot of people haven't heard them, and all those songs were dear to me, but the ones that are the hits are the ones that get all the attention, and some of the ones that you pour your heart and soul into don't necessarily get to see the light of day. And I'd like to do some acoustic versions of those songs and maybe get them out there as well. Have some surprises for the fans and stuff.
Yeah. Well, the stuff you're working on, like Evil Knievel, would we expect that it sounds similar to what you did with Saliva, or is it going to have like a different feel musically?
No, it's the same. It's my same playbook I've been running my whole career. I kind of started developing my sound in a band I was in called Blackbone back in the 90s. We toured regionally around Memphis, and we used to go up and play in Chicago, and we did some shows out west. And I started to develop my sound in that band, and then once I got in Saliva, I took all you take all the mistakes that you made from the project beforehand, and you try not to carry those mistakes over into the next project. And that's what I'm doing now, is I'm just reinventing and reincarnating myself into something that is my own. And I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine named Malcolm Springer, who's a producer from back in Memphis, and he lives in Nashville now. And I was kind of lost and trying to find myself, and I was having some trouble, having some depression and anxiety, which I've dealt with mental illness my whole adult life, and probably my childhood too. I just didn't know what it was back then, but I was dealing with some depression and anxiety, and he told me, and he said, he told me, he said, "Where's that guy that wrote Your Disease? Where's that guy that used to walk around with his backpack on and his black blazer and that little green notebook up under your arm, writing lyrics all the time? Where's that guy at?" He goes, "I want to see that guy." And it just, you need somebody that loves you sometimes to shock you back into your skin. You know what I mean? And he certainly did that for me. He shocked me back into who I was and who I am. And I just latched onto that. And I remember watching James Brown is one of my biggest influences. I love James Brown because he's so just righteously funky, and just everything is about the, you know what I mean? Everything's on that 1 and 4. And I remember that scene in the movie where he was going around the room telling the drummer, "What is that instrument you're playing?" And he said, "Well, it's drums, James." And he said, "That's right." And he goes to the guitar player, and he'd say, "What's that instrument you're playing?" And he goes, "It's a guitar." He goes, "Hell no, it ain't. It's drums." Go to the next guy, and he'd say, "What is that you're playing?" He'd say, "It's a bass, James." He goes, "That ain't no bass. That's drums." And go to the next guy, and so on and so forth. And he'd just go down the line and tell every instrument that they were a part of the drums. And that's where my heart lies in music, is every instrument, whether it's the lead guitar or the bass or the drums or the freaking triangle, whatever you're playing, it has to be in that beat. It has to be funky and solid, and it has to be in that beat. And I had to get back to that. I had to get back to that Memphis bounce that I grew up with, that I learned from, like 666 Mafia and 8 Ball and MJG and Al Capone, artists like that, and from, Beastie Boys and Run DMC and Rage Against the Machine. Was a huge, huge, like, man, when Rage Against the Machine came out, it was like a nuclear weapon hit my mind, dude. And I mean, that's always been what I've strived for, is that renegades of funk type bounce with big choruses, big, huge choruses. And honestly, finding that place in my music where I can tell the truth about what's going on in my life. And I've had some hard, some hard things hit my life in the past 10 years, but I've never stopped writing music. I think that when you are an artist of any kind, whether you're a painter or a sculptor or a songwriter, I think when the inspiration hits you, you don't have any choice in the matter. It comes, and you can either record it or write it down or paint it or sculpt it or whatever you do right then, or it'll vanish. It'll be gone. There's an old quote I heard one time that said, Edgar Allan Poe said the greatest poetry he ever wrote, he forgot because he didn't have a pencil.
Yeah.
So I try to, when these things hit me, I try to, write them down. I tell my wife, I call them walk hard moments. If you've ever seen that movie, Walk Hard.
Yeah.
I have those moments where somebody will say something and I'll be like, my eyes will just glaze over and I'll be like, guilty as charged, and I'll come up with a title, or I'll come up with an idea for a song, and I'll write it down in my phone, or I'll write it in my little notebook. I started carrying that backpack again, like Malcolm Springer told me to, and I started carrying my little notebook again too, and writing stuff down when the inspiration hits me, because if I don't, I won't remember it.
So when you write something down like that and you go back to it, is it mainly just like a theme or like an idea for a song, or is it like actual lyrics? Or are you writing down like some kind of like rhythm in your head that you heard, that kind of thing?
It's a combo platter. It's usually if it's, some of it comes to me all in one big piece, and I've just sang it into my phone, into the voice recorder, and then I'll go over and write the lyrics down on my phone, and or I'll also write it in my notebook. But yeah, if I didn't have a phone, I mean, sometimes I curse the day phones were made, and then sometimes I thank God that they were made, because if they weren't, I wouldn't remember half the stuff that comes up, because I wouldn't have no way to, record it into some kind of technology and save it.
Right. Yeah, it seems like they're both a blessing and a curse. It's hard to remember how we survived without them, even though we obviously did.
Right. I think we're the weirdest generation too. I think Gen Xers are the weirdest generation, and kind of the strongest generation. Well, I mean, maybe not as strong as the greatest generation back in the day, but I think we're unique. I'll say that, because we're the last generation that was born before there was technology. The new kids that are being born will never not know when phones were here.
Right.
Or weren't here. They'll never remember when phones were not here. That won't be a part of their, their life. That won't be a part of their journey or their walk. They won't remember when there wasn't phones, and we do. So I think it's like learning to walk and chew gum at the same time, sometimes.
Right.
Trying to catch up with the technology and and everything, technology's moving so fast. Even since I left the band in 2010, I mean, 2000, uh, even 2010 to 2022 is vastly different than it was in 2010, and I'm struggling to keep up with the technology. I'll tell you a quick story about that. I did a song with this band that I love recently, a band called Silent Theory, and they wanted me to come spit a verse on this song. They had like a cool hip hop rap verse in the middle of their song, and they asked me would I do it, and they sent me the music, and I loved the song, and I was like, heck yeah, man, I'm in, dude. So they flew me up to Des Moines and or up to Washington State, and I went to the studio and recorded the song, and tweaked the lyrics a little bit, and then went into the studio, spit the verse out. He re-racked it. I doubled the track, and then I put some little harmonies here and there, and then doubled my voice and all that, and then I was done. So we jump in the car with the band. The band's actually managed by my drummer in Saliva, Paul Crosby. He actually manages that band. So we all jump in the drummer's brother's truck, and we ran to dinner, and they said, we're fixing to go shoot the video. And I was like, right now? And he goes, yeah, we're going to shoot the video for the song. They're already set up, ready to go. So we went and ate some sushi, and then we left, and we went over, and they had this big setup with cameras and everything in this beautiful theater where it was like an old Shriners theater or whatever, like from back in the 1800s. It was gorgeous theater. And I said, so am I going to be in the video? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, well, how am I going to be able to sing along to my part if I just recorded it in the studio and y'all are shooting the video over here across town? He goes, oh man, it's already there. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, what you recorded is already at the set of the video. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's crazy. And it sure was, man. They had the verse I did was already over there and already mixed, and sort of had, a little quick mix on it. And I was just in awe of the technology. But yeah, I mean, technology's moving fast, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit ago, you mentioned, being inspired by different things as you've gotten older, and of course, things that have happened in your life. When you look back at, music that you wrote 20 years ago, do the lyrics still mean the same thing to you that they did back then, or does that change as well?
I'm one of those guys, man, that the lyrics mean just as much to me today as they did the day I wrote them. That's one thing that I'm really thankful for, is that those songs that I did with Saliva have had such a good shelf life. And, we'll be riding down the road, and we'll hear it on like turbo or satellite radio or whatever, and my kids will be like, Daddy, that's you, and I'm just so thankful that music is still relevant and still, still able to be listened to with integrity. So yes, every word means everything to me, because I mean, especially, like Your Disease or Click Click Boom, being a kid and being in my bedroom and looking outside and being like, man, watching other kids play football and baseball and stuff. And I was just like, I wanted to be a rock and roll star, man. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a songwriter. And I just had big dreams, and I didn't want to I didn't want to do what the other kids were doing. And then a song like Always, where a girlfriend of mine's sister was getting beat up by this guy, and I was raised up in some domestic abuse situations with my family, so it really hurt me to see her being hurt. You know what I mean? And I can't stand it when somebody hits a woman. It just really offends me as a man and as a father and all kinds of different ways. So
Right.
I wrote that song. I wrote that song about her situation with that man, but I wrote it as if I was her. I wrote it as if I was singing from the female's perspective. So, that one means a lot to me. And every one of them have some kind of special place in my heart. And I think that is what touches the fans so much, because the most popular thing I hear from the fans is, man, your music got me through a really rough time in my life. And I just, appreciate your music so much, because it got me through a time where, I didn't want to live, or I hated my situation, or I was being abused, or, just a myriad of different things. And that's what means the most to me, is knowing that music somehow touched people, that I touched somebody's heart that I've never even laid eyes on. You know what I mean? And I've helped them in some kind of way. That means the world to me. That means more to me than fame or money or success or any of this crap. That's what it's all about for me, is being able to touch people's hearts.
I mean, speaking of the music with Saliva, the Blue Ridge performance, like, what was your first thought whenever you were approached about that, or however that situation went? What was your first thought as far as yes, no, maybe all that? Was it excitement or not?
Well, yeah, no, I was thrilled. I was really thrilled and excited. But I was like, my first thought was, I got to get my ass in the gym. But yeah, I was, totally excited and thrilled, and just totally looking forward to getting on stage in front of the fans and singing those songs. There we go. It's a little better. Starting to wash out. But yeah, I was just totally excited about getting to sing in front of the fans, and getting to perform those songs, and getting to see my old friends again. Wayne Sweeney is a dear friend of mine. He was a lead guitarist of a band back in Memphis called TNA. And me and my best friend used to sneak into bars before we were old enough to even get in bars and drink. We used to go sneak into clubs to see Wayne Sweeney play in TNA, because he was just the most badass lead guitar player I'd ever seen. He was like Randy Rhoads or something. He was just a phenomenal guitar player. And so I was really excited to see him again at Blue Ridge, because it had been 10 years since I'd seen him. And Brad, the bass player, I've spent some time with him on the road, because he used to fill in for Dave Novotny, our bass player in Saliva, when Dave would have something, if a child was being born, when his two sons were born, Brad came out and filled in for Dave on the road. So I got to know Brad a little bit, so it was good to see him. And I had never met the drummer, but she was Samantha. She was really nice. It was cool to get to meet her, and I was, curiously nervous about meeting Bobby. You know what I mean? I had never met Bobby before. I knew his dad. His dad is a dear, dear friend of mine, who was, there for me when my son died. And I'll never forget that. So I already loved Bobby's dad. And it was nice to finally get to meet Bobby. He's a real nice kid. And it's nice to see him continuing to carry the flag and the legacy for the fans of Saliva and whatnot. I was proud to get to meet him.
Like, say, when you first met with Wayne or walked out on stage, did it feel like no time had passed, or was it like an odd feeling?
Oh, my friend asked me that last night. He said, "What was it like when you walked out there?" He said, "Was it like nothing? Was it like you never left?" And I have to say it kind of felt that way. It just kind of felt like, it's weird how you can spend a decade, just being a husband and being a father and I was a drug counselor at a couple of different rehabs and working a regular job, being a counselor, and just being a regular guy. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd get recognized here and there sometimes, but not having to deal with the normal things that you deal with being on the road and being in a band and when, as they say, when the lights go down and the curtain closes, it's a different world. But being away from all that, and then it was like flipping on a light switch, just pow, like there I was again, on stage in front of thousands of people that knew every word of every song that I sang, and it was just surreal. It was just really surreal, but I love every second of it. I am thankful and grateful for every second of it. I'm not one of those people that begrudges. I never understood when I was a kid how some people would get big and famous or be popular because of the beautiful music they'd written, and then curse their fame or curse the fact that they had to deal with what they have to deal with from fans or from being recognized or whatever. I just never understood that, because I relished in every second of it.
This next question, I'm not asking this to like get a sensationalized answer or anything, but I was just curious. I know you're cool with Bobby, but when Saliva did those,
here comes.
No, when they did those re-recorded versions in 2021 of several of the songs from Every 6 Seconds, were you cool with that? Or, I mean, I guess it's the same idea as what you've talked about doing with acoustic versions or something, but
yeah, I mean, they have the right to do that as much as I have the right to, do an acoustic version of Purple Rain or, an acoustic version of Back in Black or, any song. They have the right to do that. I don't begrudge them for that. I think, they're doing what's best for them, and I can't blame them for that.
Okay.
But I hear you though. It is kind of like watching. It's like watching your ex old lady with her new man or something.
Right.
It definitely doesn't. It definitely doesn't go down easy.
Right.
If that's what you're asking, but I'm a mature, level-headed person, and I respect Bobby a lot, and I respect Wayne a lot, and Brad as well, and Sammy too, their drummer. So I can't fault them for, like I said, for doing what they need to do to survive.
Yeah.
More power to them.
Yeah. Well, in the past decade that you've been away from Saliva, did any other bands ever approach you about joining as their vocalist? I mean, I'm not looking for names. I was just curious if it happened throughout the years.
Yeah, I've one happened right off the bat, man. Like, I think I left the band in 2010, and this band came in 2012, and they're like, their manager called me and he said, man, all you got to do is go get on a plane. I need you to come down here to Florida, and we already got the songs written. All you got to do is go in the studio and sing them, and then I need you to go on the road. And he said, I'll write you a check right now for a ridiculous amount of money. And I said no. But if I hadn't said no, I wouldn't have got to spend that quality time with my wife and children that I got to spend with them. I wouldn't have had my second daughter, probably right after Jordan. We had Justice in 2006, right after we were married. And then we had Jordan in 2011. And I wouldn't have been there for Jolie to be born, in 2014. I wouldn't have been there for that.
Like, speaking of Justice, he was with you guys at Blue Ridge, so obviously he's into the rock. Are the rest of your kids into your music and the rock music, or is it kind of all over the place, taste wise at least?
No, they love rock and roll. Justice is we call him Little Eddie Trunk, because he is he's the rock historian of the family. Like, he can tell you every member of every band intimately, like every bass player and drummer that's ever played on any rock album. He's a big Seven Dust fan, which is ironic because Seven Dust was the band that we toured with the most when I was in Saliva. So to see him be such a huge Seven Dust fan is kind of awesome, and he loves Incubus. That's his other favorite band, and Tool. Tool's everything to Justice and Dylan. That's their favorite band.
Well, when you guys, like, say the whole family gets in a car to go on a road trip or something, like what music's playing? Is that your decision or your wife's decision?
Oh no, it's usually the kids.
Okay.
It's usually the kids' decision. And we usually listen to Turbo or Octane, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I try to keep up, what's going on, and what the new stuff sounds like, and what new music's out there. And I try to stay abreast of the situation, as they say.
Right. I know you recently here in Tulsa got on stage with Poison to sing Nothing But a Good Time, and I know you've done that. I think you did that in the past with Bret Michaels before. Did you grow up a fan of Poison, or how did that connection come to be?
Oh, yeah. Yes, man. I was a huge Poison fan back in the day. I've always loved Bret, and he's always been so kind to me, and always invited me on stage to sing with him, whether it's with his Bret Michaels band or Poison, either one. He's always invited me to get on stage with him and do the encore, and he's just a sweetheart of a guy. Him and CC DeVille both. I love CC too. I've never really got to spend any time with Ricky or Bobby, but I love them too. I'm a huge fan of both of them. And always been a a huge fan of Poison. I remember the first time I saw their album cover. I was like, damn, them girls are fine as hell.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know who this band is, but these chicks are fine, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking Ricky Rocket was pretty hot, and then I found out it was Ricky Rocket. I was like, oh shit. Yeah.
No, I love Brett, man. Brett's a sweetheart of a guy. He's a good man. I mean, all the way down to the foundation. He is just very charitable, giving, good soul, man. He's just a good human being. He is exactly what you see. He is, you know, you meet a lot of people in this business that are, you know, flaky or you know, kind of, you know, one person when you see him, and then a different person when you see him another time. And he's not like that. He is exactly what you see. He's a kind, just a charitable, good person.
Good.
And I love him to death. Good dude.
That's good to hear. Well, final question for you. I've been a big wrestling fan since I was a kid, and I know in your days in Saliva, you guys had a ton of stuff with WWE, a lot of songs involved with either wrestlers or just those soundtracks. Like, was that a good experience for you guys working with them?
Yeah, at the time, Jim Johnston, I believe, was the music director over there. I don't think he's with them anymore, but he had wrote that intro music for Stone Cold, and he wrote all that. Like, he did all that drop D, you know, heavy guitar stuff. So that was right up our alley. You know what I mean? And we're huge wrestling fans, especially coming from Memphis. You know,
Yeah.
I tell people when I was growing up, there was three kings. There was Jesus, Elvis, and Jerry Lawler.
Right.
So, yeah, I grew up around Memphis wrestling, and we used to go down to, they had WMC TV5 was the big big NBC network in town, the big NBC affiliate in town. And every Saturday morning, they would have wrestling live right there in the newsroom. They would sort of change the newsroom over into a wrestling arena, and they'd set up a ring and everything, and just had these amazing drama-filled skits that they would do with these wrestlers. And I used to just eat that up when I was a kid, you know. And I grew up watching Jerry Lawler and Randy Savage and Austin Idol and Bill Dundee and the Fabulous Ones and Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and all those guys, man. Just amazing, talented wrestlers. And you know, it taught me a lot about the entertainment industry and how it works. And just, you know, I was just fascinated with that as a kid. And then, you know, growing up and finally getting in a band like Saliva and getting invited to write different intro music for different wrestlers. I think the first one we did was for the Dudley Boys. It was a song called Get the Tables.
Oh yeah.
And so we did that one, and you know, proved ourselves to Mr. Johnston and the WWE when we did that. And then they invited us back, and we did Jericho's theme. We did a theme song for him. I think it was called King of My World or something. And then we did good on that one. And then we got invited back and did Batista's theme. we did his theme song, and he still used it this last WrestleMania when he came out. He still came out to our song, and I was like, that's pretty dope.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just in Memphis. I think it was in June, and I was on Bill Street, and I didn't even know that Jerry Lawler had a restaurant bar down there until I was just walking by and just happened to see it. It wasn't there last time I was there a few years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, he used to run for mayor every 4 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Did he ever get close, or did he ever get a lot of votes?
I never kept up with that. I was always too young to vote.
Right. Right on, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing this new music once you get it out.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Trent, for taking the time with me. I appreciate you having me.
There you go, Josey Scott, the original vocalist of Saliva. A huge thank you to David Montgomery, Holly Hutchinson, and Corinne Hatcher, all for their help getting that interview set up. We did that on Zoom. Got that knocked out. Like I said, it's been probably over a month now, so I'm glad to finally back home being able to get this one out for you. Very cool stuff. Like we talked about there in that interview, be sure to be looking out for this new music coming from Josey Scott. I'm excited to hear it, as I'm sure many of you are. Look at, follow him on all the socials. Look up his website so you can stay up to date for future announcements on future shows. Josey Scott's back, and that's a great thing for rock and roll, in my opinion. He just recently, actually I believe at this point, it's probably about a week and a half ago, he performed on stage with Bret Michaels in Miami, Oklahoma, which is near Joplin, Missouri. And that's something we mentioned there in the interview, because he did it this past late summer on that concert I mentioned at the beginning. The DB concerts put on whenever Poison was here in Tulsa. And then I know he's done it. I believe he did it at Rocklahoma once, and I think he did it at the Tulsa State Fair with Bret Michaels. So obviously anytime Bret Michaels is in the area, he hits up Josey and brings him out, which is a cool thing. So there you go. If this is your first time listening because you're a fan of Josey Scott, man, there's tons of episodes throughout the years here. 362 episodes before this you could check out. One thing I do want to mention is that Scott Dillon, who has been working with Josey for a long time, and I found out has been a long-time friend, I think going back to like youth maybe. I spoke to him a bit, at Blue Ridge. One time I called him on the phone, and his ringtone was, his ringtone was Kiss, I Was Made for Loving You, which I'm like, this is great. So we talked a little bit about Kiss there. So I need to mention here for Scott and for any other Kiss fan, Gene Simmons has been on this podcast before, which is one of the highlights of my life, okay? Just like talking to Josey Scott has been. And Bruce Kulick has also been on this podcast, which was another great one. So if you're a Kiss fan, you got 2 great episodes you can check out. We've also had on members of Def Leppard. Vivian Campbell has been on here, of Def Leppard and Dio. Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses. Glenn Hughes, who was also Blue Ridge, of the Dead Daisies and Deep Purple, has been on this podcast. But man, if you like Saliva, you might like bands like, Shine Down, Seven Dust, Saving Abel, Trapped, Skillet. All these bands, several of those bands were at Blue Ridge as well. Members of those bands have all been on this podcast. In fact, 2 members of Seven Dust have been on here. 2 members of Corrosion and Conformity have been on here. Let me think here. We've had on all kinds of stuff from the 80s with guys from bands like Whitesnake, Winger, Warrant, Tesla, Great White, Kicks, LA Guns. We've also had on some heavier stuff like White Zombie, Prong, Typo Negative, Helmet, Testament, Megadeth, The Black Dahlia Murder, Killswitch Engage. If you're a fan of Killswitch Engage, Mike D, the bass player, has been on here before. But there's a very good chance that another member of that band might be on here very soon. So, with that being said, keep an eye out for that. Someone that definitely will be on here soon is Mozinko, the vocalist of Steelheart. I recorded that not long after recorded this episode with Josey. And that was a great one because I've been a fan of that man since that band came out. Just a phenomenal vocalist that is just, to this day, just unbelievable when you hear him. I've also recently had ones with guys from King's X. Michael Monroe was on here. So much stuff you can check out. So just dig back through thethunderunderground.com is the website. You can listen directly there. You can also listen pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, Mixcloud. Wherever you're listening, be sure to click like or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Follow Thunder Underground on all the socials. Anytime you see a post, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, if you like, share, retweet, follow, comment, any of that stuff's an easy, free way to help out this podcast. It helps spread the word around. More people see it. It definitely helps. I've also got T-shirts, koozies, shot glasses, guitar picks, stickers, magnets, all that great stuff for sale. If you would like some. So hit me up, message. If you see me in person, do it that way as well. All right. I think it's time to get out of here. Once again, a massive thank you to MedFarm, Sunset Tattoo, DEB Concerts, and Josey Scott. And until next time.
I'm old, man. Fuck this technology, dog. I hate this shit.
Thunder Underground, y'all.